feel all the way from your knee down to your toe on both sides, and it doesn't feel different on the outside or the inside, left or right. I still checked your blood sugars was 12 to 15. Could you have started with the insulin before then? Yeah, this was really something remarkable, something very unexpected actually. We first met this patient in the previous century, in the early 1990s. And she wasn't all that unwell, but she was developing diabetes. She was quite overweight, and in time, the blood sugar got quite out of control. And about 15 years ago or so, she was put on medication. Firstly, it was just oral medication, and it didn't really help. There's a certain measure that I think we need to take note of, and that is a substance called hemoglobin A1C. Now, hemoglobin A1C is the hemoglobin in your blood, you know, the stuff that carries the oxygen, makes your blood red. If there's always a bit of sugar in the blood, and if this sugar binds to the hemoglobin, it becomes hemoglobin A1C. I don't know where the name comes from. But that hemoglobin can then no longer carry oxygen. It is non-functional, it's dysfunctional. And it lives for an average of 120 days. That's a turnover time of hemoglobin or red blood cells actually. More than 10% of hemoglobin in 2005 was bound to blood sugar like this. So 10% of her hemoglobin couldn't carry oxygen. That got a little bit better when she was put on high doses of medication that kind of forces the sugar into the cells. So we don't measure blood sugar as high in the serum because a lot of that's been pushed into the cells by medication. Eventually, the cells started resisting this medication also, just like it resists blood sugar when it was too high. They start resisting this medication also, and it went up more and more. So she progressed or graduated to the need for use of insulin. Insulin also forces the blood sugar into the cells, but let's just quickly go through the types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes should not actually both be called diabetes. In type 1, the blood sugar is high because it is unable to enter the cells. In type 2, the blood sugar is high because the cells doesn't want it to enter. There's more than enough in the cells already. So the cell starts resisting the entry of blood sugar into the cells. Now that's typically when people get overweight. The cells get too big. They don't want to get any bigger, so they start resisting the entry of blood sugar, which can in the cell turn into fat or other storage forms. Now, in allopathic orthodox medicine, the way we treat it is with medicine that forces that sugar into the cell. So what we measure in the blood seems better. But we don't always think, why did the cells resist the entry of that sugar in the first place? It does so by recalling the little pumps in the walls of the cell called insulin receptors. That little pump grabs sugar in the serum and puts it into the cell. And that little pump is driven by electricity called insulin. So if you don't have electricity, that pump can't work. If you don't have a pump, it can't get in. So what happens when a cell gets overfilled? It recalls that little pump, the insulin receptor. It says, come, I don't need any more sugar, come in. And they do go in there. Now that sounds quite simple and straightforward. Unfortunately, it isn't quite as straightforward because there's a lot of people who have this disease, but they're not overweight. And I actually think we should be honest. I don't understand why. It's also a case of the receptors not responding, or like we discovered several years ago, that receptor, that little pump, goes sit inside the cell, waiting probably for the cell to need the sugar again and then resurfaces to pump sugar into the cell. But there's some people whose cells are small and thin. So these two manifestations of diabetes shouldn't also probably have the same name, just like type 1 and type 2. We could say within type 2, let's say there's a type 3. Type 2, the cells are overfilled. Type 3, they are not overfilled, but they still resist the entry of sugar into them. We keep on pushing the sugar into the cells with medication, and then the body starts resisting medication also. But this specific lady, patient of mine, who came here since the 1990s, developed type 2 diabetes, ran out of response to the medication, started injecting insulin, still had this very high hemoglobin A1C, like there it was 10%, we got it down to about 8%. And when we reached 8%, that was with a lot of insulin, plus a full dose of metformin and vidagliptin. So there's two types of insulin, two types of oral medication, just to get the blood sugar down a little bit, and we got the hemoglobin A1C down to 8.4%. That is still considered very high. So on that date, she came and visited us, and I eventually convinced her to go on a fast, preferably an extended fast, but simply stop putting anything other than air and water into the body. And what happened? Within a day or two, she stopped the insulin, she stopped the oral medication, and the blood sugar dropped to 5.7 millimole per liter. Now, just to remind us, in America they use different units to measure blood sugar, but I stick with the SI, or Système International. So, for the first time, the blood sugar dropped and the hemoglobin A1C dropped to perfectly normal, to 5.7. Just think about it. Blood sugar from 10 down to under 6, with the hemoglobin A1C dropping from 8 to 5.7, at the same time where all medicine was stopped. High doses of insulin and high doses of oral medication were stopped, and in spite of that, the blood sugar dropped, hemoglobin A1C dropped. In other words, it's almost as if those medicines caused her diabetes. Because when we stopped the medication, and the blood sugar and the hemoglobin A1C normalized. But okay, we know that was not the case. It wasn't the medicine that made her sick. The medicine tried very hard to keep her healthy and succeeded to a very large extent. But without that, I don't think she would have been around. We discovered something better. For her case, I don't say it will hold for all so-called type 2 diabetes. Let us call her type 3. In that case, we simply stop eating. What happens when you stop eating? The cells burn their content in order to stay alive, and their content is this over-supplied blood sugar that becomes cell sugar, it becomes glycogen and a few other things. Anyway, since that day, she has never used insulin again. And as we can see, the blood sugar levels, these were fasting levels, dropped from 15 down to 10, down to less than 6, went up to just below 7. During the lockdown, she found it a little bit difficult to stick with the program she started with here at Hoogland, which after lockdown she returned to, and as we can see, the blood sugars dropped back to normal, and hemoglobin A1C last time was just above normal because of that. What happened during the lockdown, she couldn't continue rigidly with the habit she's learned here. Now, the habit she learned here is she doesn't eat on Mondays, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays. Just not eating. Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, typically 1 meal per day. And then Sunday is a feast day.
I'm Kotie Wentzel, and I'm from Botswana, and I will be 87 years old. About 10 to 15 years ago, I was diagnosed by a doctor that I've got diabetes 2. They gave me some medication for it. I had to take 2 tablets a day. I took it for 5 years, and then they changed it over. Obviously, it got worse, so they changed it over to the insulin. And then I started off with smaller doses, and as it was going on, I had to increase it, and eventually I was using 40 units in the morning and 40 at night, plus the medication. And my blood pressure was also rising. Instead of 1 tablet, I had to get another tablet. And cholesterol was also medication, and blood thinning tablets. I saw a dietitian, and she said I must eat about 6 meals a day, so that the sugar can't spike. And I got overweight slowly. Eventually, I got so bad that I could hardly move around. My daughter had to do most of the things with me. I couldn't stand for long. I couldn't sit down on a low chair. I couldn't walk. I couldn't really drive also. The first time, I remember the first time we came here, it was fasting. And it was terrible because when you start, you get such a headache from the first day. Oh, it's terrible. But eventually, your body gets used to it. So now I don't even get a headache anymore. I never even drink a headache pill because I never get a headache. So that's it. And it really is a place to start with winning the diabetes is coming here. That's what I believe in. I spoke to a lot of people, and when I say fasting for so many days, they just don't want to sit. It's too much. They can't do it. But I know it's willpower. You've got to be strong to be able to do that. But it works at the long run. That diabetes, my biggest fear is to lose a leg, go blind, lose your organs, or get bedridden for years. And that is why up till the time I'm no more, I'm going to keep on with this. And I'll be in November, I'll be 87. So I'm so happy that I could be still strong and healthy as this after the diabetes.
The guideline I give to my diabetic patients in this, and also overweight patients, people who want to lose weight, is say, okay, at least 1 day of the week you shouldn't eat, like I've been doing for 45 years. Never eat between Sunday and Tuesday. Sometimes the next Tuesday, anyway. And then for 5 days maximum on a good diet. Now there's many good diets out there, If there was a correct diet, there wouldn't be 200 diet books on the shelf. What's right for you is wrong for me. What's right for you in summer is wrong for you in winter. What's wrong for you in one biorhythm is wrong for you in another biorhythm. So there's enough good diets. but you don't follow that diet for more than 5 days, ever. And in those 6 days, in other words, the fasting day and the 5 dieting days, which may be 2 fasting or 3 fasting days also, doesn't matter. In that time, you get a type of a biofeedback. I would have liked to eat that. I would have liked to eat that. But my doctor's book says I can't eat that. So it builds up a lot of stresses in your body and in your mind and in your social life, because that's said to be bad for you. Now, if I say bad for you, is it bad for your stomach? Is it bad for your heart? Or is it bad for your social environment? It's important. What's the use of becoming old as a social outcast? I'd rather sacrifice a few years and have a social, enjoyable life. Talk of enjoyable, that also includes nice eating. Eating things you like. Breaking out from time to time. Now, with this pattern, you allocate a very specific day to give in to everything you would have given in the week. But it is every week, which means you don't have to wait until you've lost 100 kilograms. You don't have to wait until it's your birthday next year. You wait until it's, say, Sunday. And in the rest of the week, you make notes of all the things you crave, all the things you think about eating, and on that day, you have everything on that list. Now, I can promise you, if you wrote down 7 Cadbury double-deckers in that week, plus a few slabs of chocolate, and now the rule says you must have it. Next week, you're going to go a few days before you write them up again. That creates biofeedback. One of our problems with guiding our own diet is that we don't give it time. We think about eating something and we have it. So we add an anticipatory satisfaction of a few seconds or a few minutes. If however you fast on your Monday, you crave something, you know you're going to have it on Sunday, then you've had 6 days of anticipatory satisfaction, which just gives you a lot more mileage for the same investment. And you never ever say no. You just say, listen, just wait a bit. It's not that difficult. Don't say no, just wait a bit. And I would say people whose diabetes is not yet in such excellent control as Mrs. Wentzel's, may need the insulin on that day. May need the oral medication on that day. And you can soon learn how to control it and say, I know if I'm going to eat like that, I need this amount of insulin or whatever. And then 10 to 1, much less, or like in Tannie Kotie's case, nothing on any other days. But okay, she now needs nothing on any day. And that is a cure of diabetes after 15 to 20 years of full-blown diabetes. Now, I myself have always preached and lectured that that is not possible. We can possibly reverse it in the first year or even the first 2 years. But the 2 decades, I was surprised, but now I know, that was type 3 diabetes. In other words, the high blood sugar was because the cells were overfull. Now, there's a number of type 2 diabetes where the cells are not overfilled. You can see these people are not seriously overweight, or some not overweight at all, and yet the cells, by some reason, refuse the sugar to enter. The insulin is there, the insulin receptors should be there because the cells are not excessive large. The cell gets excessively large, it recalls its insulin receptors so that they can't get any more sugar into the cell to make it even larger. But why in some people it happens when they're not overweight, I don't. The way to get diabetes into remission, again, I don't say cure it, I say get it into remission. The most powerful single tool is fasting. Periods of fasting. It's part of our DNA. Those of our ancestors who could not survive a few weeks without food, they didn't become our ancestors. They became lion feed or something like that. So we all carry the genes that allows us to go for a few weeks without eating. And we can observe that, and in a place like this where we have knowledgeable supervision and the laboratory and investigations and nurses on call, one can do it quite safely. I will tell a person when it's necessary to abort that fast, and we can start another one. Please don't do it blindly. People have done a lot of harm to themselves for simply chasing a record. I want to also fast for 40 days to say I've done it. Please, please. That can be fatal. It has been fatal. If you do a fast, anything over 5 or 6 days, it should be under good supervision, at least until you have adequate experience and the necessary tools, such as some biochemical equipment to monitor yourself, or be in a situation where somebody can monitor you. Don't take this lightly. We like fasting and exercise to go together, but I wouldn't suggest you tackle the Comrades Marathon 2 days after starting a fast. We need to be reasonable. You know? And I just think telling people to eat every day and a few times every day, that is unreasonable. It is wrong. It's contrary to our DNA, and it creates a lot of diseases. Our whole world lives in these diseases caused by incessant everyday eating. Your laborer can't work 7 days every week, 52 weeks every year, 10 years every decade. But you expect that of one of your slaves called your digestive system. That's wrong. Your digestive system needs to rest. And some people will tell me, but my heart doesn't rest, and they're wrong. If you look at an electrocardiogram, in most people, about 2/3 of the time, the heart's laying there. It's working 1/3 of the time. Every organ in us needs to rest. The kidney shuts down when you have deep sleep. The brain, well, we don't know too much about that yet, but we do go into REM sleep and deep sleep, and it's just the computer can't understand itself, so I don't think humanity will ever understand the human brain. But at least we relatively recently learned that the brain can repair itself and make new cells. We didn't believe that before. Well, medical school, I was taught the brain, once you've made those cells, that's it. Can't make new cells. Now we know change. Things going to change. We're going to get more information, more knowledge, more insights, more experience. And a lot of what I've been practicing right now, I'm ready for it to be proven not the best approach. But I know it contains a few of the best approaches. It contains some of them, else it wouldn't have worked so well.